Hello, friends. Hopefully, this thing is working. Okay, I see. Um, Something very important happened. A negative thing happened um, earlier this week. We had to let Levon go because too many of his customers were deactivating. And Gen Mobile's put a new emphasis on this. Um, I guess they've always been looking at it. There's all kinds of reports in here and things like that. But talking about disconnects, things that we can monitor. I always thought that we were good um, on this, but I'm going to have to show you what happened, show you what is happening, and to the best of my understanding, and make something kind of get this under control. Most all of y'all, I would say, are fine um, on your churn rates, but I want to show you what happened, what they're looking at, as best as I can tell, um, and kind of gather your thoughts on how to avoid it. I've got mine. I'm going to share them, and that I just don't want this to happen again. That was one of the um, worst conversations I've had to have with somebody, um, because really, in his case, I don't think it was fair. Um, Now, when I say things like that, bear in mind that I love Gen Mobile. I love the people. They're not trying to persecute anyone or anything like that. They have um, been so good to us. And when something happens like this that is unfair, especially somebody nice and a good person like Levon, kind of give you a little backstory there. How people will, anything negative that happens to them, a lot of people will, do things like hold inventory hostage until they can get $500 out of you, or something goofy like that. Um, Levon didn't do any of that. He was extremely disappointed. He had plans going forward. Um, he was getting ready, for example, to take off to North Dakota and work tribal because he has family up in that area. And he had bought a new tent. He was getting himself ready and gathering up his inventory, getting ready to go. And then here I call him up and say, hey, they've shut you down for X, Y, and Z. And, you know, when something like that happens, I have a, I want to defend my guy, and some of the things that I say may end up sounding negative um, about the people who spurred that on or created that. It's not my intention. But anyway, this intro has gone 4 minutes. I want to show you what has happened as best as I can understand it. I'm going to get into it right now. Now, what you're seeing in front of you is the Gen Mobile sales portal through QuickBase. Um, you don't generally have access to this, but it has a lot of reporting. If you scroll up and down, you see pie charts and uh, graphs, and just about any piece of information you need is right here at your fingertips to help manage stuff. I go down a lot of rabbit holes in this thing. But if you look closely, you can see each one of you have your own little piece of the pie right there where it statistically looks at you. Now, one of the things that they look at hard, and they came down. It feels suddenly, but we did have some warning. I just thought we were good enough to to not have to worry about it. But anyway, there's a little report over here to the left that says intra month churn by agent current month, and there's another one talking about last month. Um, these are the two reports that trigger somebody in upper management at Gen Mobile taking a look at your performance churn wise. Now they have thousands and thousands of agents. They can't just be sitting there looking at everybody all the time. So something triggers um, a look, and that is the intra month churn by agent. Now I'm going to click on that, and you're going to see a report pop up. There it comes. Now this report is sorted out by your username and password into the vault. Now this is month to date. This is June. Um, look at Levon right here. He's the top one. I'm hoping that this cursor shows up. It doesn't appear to be, but let's see. He had done 12 activations in the month of June, and none of them had disconnected. Trish, 114 activations in June, zero disconnects. Christine, approaching 200 activations, 1.2%. So if you go all the way down here, you can just see everybody has something going on. Our worst intra-month churn rate right now is 1.5%. So based on June's numbers, nobody would be getting a look see. Okay, they wouldn't be questioning anything we're doing churn related. Now let's go back to that report and let's look at last month. This is where it got goofy. Everything kind of went sideways because the intra-month churn report for last month. Now, intra-month churn, that is someone who they activated in May and disconnected in May. As we go up and down here, Levon was at 16.7%. That obviously got him looked at. We had two that were looked at, in quotes, two reps. One was Fran, of all people. Can you imagine? Now, we all know Fran. Um, anything she can control is going to be controlled as far as uh, getting to a positive outcome on churn. So we're going to take a look at hers later, um, her stuff a little bit later, and see why she wasn't let go. And I'll tell you right now, is because it was pointed out to them that Fran's been with us a long, long time, and this is the first time something like this, these statistics have looked this way, and um, they went and they looked at her overall performance for several months back, and of course she's good, and they backed off her. But Levon hadn't been with us long. He had done a grand total of 100 and some odd activations, and he had a bad rate there at one particular point in time. I mean, his first activation with us was in April. Um, he hasn't had time for his customers to make them money yet. Uh, we argued that he should be allowed to continue on and be, and let's train, let's go give us a chance to dig in there and look and see what may have happened, where he was setting up, if it was the type of activation he was doing that was creating the problem. Um, all that stuff we just don't know. Uh, but they looked at it hard and cold and just said, we're losing money on this cat. We got to cut him loose. And of course, I don't like it. Um, But anyway, that triggered the look. Um, and then they look deeper into everything. Basically, you get their attention um, by having a bad month or where intra-month churn is concerned. And basically, if you haven't been with them a long time to establish a counter narrative, um, we're in a little bit of a fix. And that could come up with, like, for example, Chris Lyle. You need to pay particular attention because if you go sideways on the intra-month churn, you haven't been here long enough to have generated a positive cash flow situation for them. And your output is low. So every time somebody disconnects, it creates a high percentage. But we'll get back to that. I'm kind of rambling. Okay, so let's go look. Once you have garnered their attention, they're going to go look at another report. Disconnects by month by agent. And if you look, it's going all the way back to March, where Levant, for example, had 0. Then in April, he had a 17% um, drop in his customers. In May, he had a 21%. These percentages look high because he wasn't a high volume. Um, he wasn't producing a high volume. To see how this kind of works out, Trish didn't have a good March. If you look the second, I'm trying to get this thing to highlight. Let's see if it'll do it. We're going to go across like that and look at Trish. She didn't have a big March, but she had 21 disconnects. Her disconnect percent was 46.7. The following month, she had a lot. She had 11 more disconnects, but the percentage was down. In May, the percentage was down even farther. So basically, they take a look and they go back and see how you've done. Um, Fortunately for Trish, they didn't start looking at this in March because she might have been in trouble. But then she's been with us for a long time. They would have looked and seen that this is not something that routinely happens. But in the end, when we get over here to the final numbers on Levant, for example, he did 124 activations, 22 of them disconnected, and that's a percentage of 17.7. I think if they had waited, he's had waited and looked at this a little bit down the road, he'd have been safe because it looks like his numbers are steadying out as time. He looks better as time goes by. But as we scroll down here, you see some of these percentages are a little bit high. Um, but the overall number comes out looking okay. Now, before you panic, um, we're going to change to a different report. I've gone into this stuff really deep, and I can only go back 90 days and have any information on disconnects. But here are some things that you need to be aware of. Um, let's get this up here. I wish I could pull this closer. But I want to take a look at, for example, Christine. This is Christine's line. Now, Christine is our most productive person, most consistent producer. nearly 700 enrollments in the last 90 days. She had 121 disconnects. That means over the course of 90 days, 17.5% of her people disconnect. Something interesting that I found out as I'm going through these numbers, Christine also does the most of our bring your own device, SIM card only. In the last 90 days, she's done 172 of those. 43 of them have disconnected, which is a disconnect rate of 25%. So Christine is our best rep. Excuse me, does it the best possible way um, in every category that you need to evaluate, from the presentation of her site to her pitch to what she tells the customers to the sites that she selects. Yet 25% of her SIM onlys disconnect. Now we want to look at Levon here. Levon, uh, he was getting into the SIM card only stuff and was doing okay with it. But look at this number here on his bring your own device. Now, Levon is new. You can't expect him to be as good at Christine as presenting this program. He has some things to learn. For example, um, he, I'm pretty sure, well, I didn't spend any time with him on site, but I'm pretty sure had I sat there, he might not be saying things like, make sure you make every, he might not consistently be saying, make sure you make at least one phone call, you know, every week, a call or a text, surf the web, something with this device every week or every month, or it's going to get shut off. He may not be throwing in there, hey, when somebody calls you up and they're offering you a cheap internet plan that's government subsidized, if you take that, which you have every right to do, if you take that, it's going to shut off your service. You know, those are probably some things that, and I'm just guessing here because, you know, like I said, I did not sit with Levon and see what his scripted message was to the customers about the churn. But we're going to have a separate training video on this that's going to have a whole lot more production value. Uh, Even though I don't have any money to spend on production value, it's going to be a little bit more production value. We're going to have some scripted things I'm going to ask you to do. But anyway, I'm sure Levon, at this point in his training, probably dropped the ball on this a little bit, which is understandable. He didn't have much of a chance to get better. We didn't have a chance to evaluate. Um, well, I'm not going to make any excuses for it. I probably had plenty of opportunities to evaluate him that I didn't take, quite frankly, because I'm lazy. I should have gone out on site with him to see, and I should be more involved in the training. But you team leaders need to be more involved in this because this is important now. It might not have seemed important before. It's always been important. It might not have seemed a top priority, but we've got to get this part of our pitch straight. Because I would say if we could do anything um, to help there, it would be what we are saying to the customer needs to be kind of uniform, and a point needs to be driven home to them that when so and so calls up, if you take that call and they're offering you um, internet for $15 a month, that's a lifeline benefit going on your internet. And you only get one benefit. And you can transfer it to whatever you want to, Mr. Customer. But here, I believe, is the one of the things that got Levon looked at, 45% of his BYODs disconnected. And we have a lot of reasons for that. But the bring your own device stuff ends up with a much higher rate. For example, Trish does a lot of SIM card only. Her disconnect rate on SIM card only is 45%. Her, but over here, if you, I'm going to highlight this. Hopefully, I can get this highlighted. Over here to the far right of that highlighted section, all her other churn is 12.72. She's running 13% over 90 days if they get a phone from her. She's running 45% on SIM card only. So there's obviously a problem with customers just in general sticking to SIM card only stuff. Our churn rate overall for the last 90 days, all disconnects of all types, we're as a team, as a unit, we're at 16%. We're at plus 2,500 on the subscriber side. That means 2,500, 2,900 people signed up, 2,510 of them stayed. So we got a churn rate over the course of 90 days of 15.76, or right at 16%. If you look at bring your own device, which we're getting an $8 bonus for, our churn rate on those is nearly double. Now, when you take out the SIM card only stuff, okay, when you take that out from your churn rate, or just take it out off the table altogether, overall, our churn rate is below 15% over the course of 90 days. So one issue that that we can have is the SIM card only stuff. Now I know there's an $8 bonus on it. You need to weigh out in your own mind whether that $8 bonus is worth the push. Now Christine, for example, does a whole lot of orders. And her churn rate is below 20%, even with all these SIM card only disconnects. Christine can probably do this without a whole lot of risk. But for example, Chris right now, he's running a really good churn rate. He's only done one SIM card only deal in his career. So, you know, Chris, carry on with what you're doing because you're below 10% on churn. Um, and but now, Chris, whatever you do, Chris, don't go to Nashville because Levon spent some time in Nashville because he has family there. He went to visit family and he worked while he was there. I'm gonna show you in a little bit that a lot of his disconnects came from Nashville. Sitting in Nashville, a highly competitive urban area. That's where everybody goes to try to get Lifeline. Everybody goes to the bigger city. Nashville and Memphis and Knoxville would be the urban areas where that would be the likely scenario that you're going to have uh, with a lot of competitors out there trying to poach your customers. But Levon spent some time in Nashville, got knocked back. Now, Fran has everybody on watching this video knows Fran. You know that Fran is not going to do anything that creates churn. But her disconnect rate or the last 90 days is almost 20%. So knowing how Fran goes about her business, something has to be up with where she's working and the type of customer that she sees. Now, she's not going to big urban markets, so that's not a problem. She's not misrepresenting anything, so that can't be a problem. But one of the things that Fran does a lot, and it makes sense to do it, um, she goes to where she feels like she can have the most helpful impact given the what this program is intended to do. So she goes to a lot of events where like it's a facility targeted at helping men who are recovering from an addiction, a halfway house for people that are coming out of jail, for example, um, a shelter for ladies who have faced some sort of abuse or are recovering from an addiction. She goes there to help them. And what is happening is those folks are being preyed upon by, because this is going to be a video on YouTube. I can't really mention company names, but you know who I'm talking about. They will come in behind. We've given them a phone, for example. Fran gave them a phone with good service on it, and our free plan with Gen Mobile is fine. But now somebody comes in there with a SIM card that's compatible, and they're peddling unlimited, and our SIM card will work in that phone you just got from Fran. You see where this goes? See where this ends up? That kind of person, that kind of salesperson or rep from a competitor, you know, they are preying on these places where Fran's going in there trying to help somebody. These folks are going right in behind her and helping themselves to her customer. So, that's the reality of what the conditions on the ground are right now. Now, we would not have looked at this to discover this kind of thing had we, not been warned that Fran's churn rate was high, because that just didn't make a bit of sense on the surface. But then you get into it and you understand what it's about. So, one of the things that there are two things I want you to consider right now, and then we're going to go into some training with another video. But this is more of a this is uh, this is what's happening now, making you aware kind of video that they're looking at this churn stuff. And once again, don't be annoyed. Well, annoyed is, yeah, you can be annoyed. You're probably annoyed just hearing my voice on this thing. But don't get a bad impression of Gen Mobile. What they're trying to do is trying to stay profitable, trying to keep giving us free devices and giving us a chance to be the only people out there doing it right. And they have to stay profitable to do that. And they are looking at us right now as a way to squeeze out some more pennies. The churn rate is this month the most important thing to them. Um, so bear that in mind. If you're not doing a couple hundred orders a month, like Christine is or like Seamus is, um, offer, bring your own device, but don't push people that way. You know, don't push them that way. That is taking your churn rate way too high. Number two, if you've been thinking about going to a big city, to a bigger town like Nashville, um, Knoxville, Memphis, Richmond, um, Atlanta, especially, don't do. You expecting to go to Cincinnati or Cleveland or Louisville, Lexington. Those are bigger towns. Guess what? Everybody that does this, that has some sort of lifeline program, they're moving around in there too. All right, so we need to go to places where the only lifeline tent they're likely to ever see is ours. And so look at your smaller towns, Newport, Tennessee, or counties and things like that. And do me a favor, send. Part of the next training video is about site selection and selecting towns and how to do it. But stay away from your big cities. Everybody's in there. Chances are somebody's going to poach enough of your customers to get Gen Mobile to look at you. And stay away from places that are not so nice competitors, aren't just competitors, they're predators. They're going to go to food pantries. They're going to go to the shelters for women. They're going to go to all these, the Salvation Army men's programs. They're going to go to the halfway houses. They're going to be sitting outside the food stamp office, probably roaming the parking lots, doing things like that. Now, our calling plan that we give away for free, because we're doing a free phone, the calling plan can't be spectacular that we give them for free. All right. Now, these folks that are doing SIM only out there, they have a spectacular calling plan because they can't do a phone. So, what they're doing is they're going to the food bank, they're going to the Salvation Army, they're going to the men's shelter, they're going to the halfway house after you've given them a phone and saying, hey, our SIM card will fit that thing. You've already got the phone. Let's just get you a better calling plan. See, those jerks are too lazy to put up a tent in a parking lot or at a small business and sit out in the sun like you do to get your big numbers. They're too lazy. They've got to scam, they've got to hustle. So they figured out that they can do things in, on a quick way, get a nice fat commission off of getting 2 or 3 of your customers every day that you already gave a phone to or sold a phone to. Anyway, that's the message on this one. I'm going to stop it. We're going to do something with some training to address this, um, and site selection, presentation, more knowledge on our calling plans versus what the other calling plan is, ways to sell, um, not just phones, but plans. Seamus does a really good job of that, by the way. and Trish has done some too. And we also have now a new way of getting that Gen Mobile app onto the phone. Once it's activated, it's much quicker. So we're going to talk about that on the next one. But anyway, let me stop this so I can actually be finished. And you watch this at your leisure. And I appreciate you. Love you. Bye.